Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I see that there are many interesting sessions right now, and you choose to go here, so thank you so much. This is my first session alone. Yesterday I had another session, but with a colleague, so it was more easy, for sure. But let's start, okay? My session is Go with Dataflows. So this is the QR code that you can give me feedback about my session. But in the end, I will share this again, so you can scan and send feedback, okay? So, who I am? I'm Maria. I'm from Portugal, and I work at DevScope. DevScope is a company that works worldwide. We are consultants, and our main goal is to help our clients make data-driven decisions by creating innovative BI solutions, okay? So if you want to contact me, this is my LinkedIn, and please contact me. So for today, what we have here. This session is an overview of Power BI Dataflows and how this piece fits into business intelligence architecture. Finally, I will let you to know how to do it, and we have some use cases, and let the data flow, okay? So, what are Power BI Dataflows? Power BI Dataflows are a feature of the Power BI platform that allow you to prepare and transform data from various sources. Dataflows enable users to create series of data transformations that can be applied to the data before it loads into Power BI datasets, for example. These transformations can include cleansing, merging, and aggregating data from different data sources, like data sets, but in Power BI service, and you can have a staging area in your Power BI service to reuse this information in several data sets. To create data flows, you will need to connect your data source, transform your data. You can use Power Query like in Power BI dataset. So you can transform your data and with mQuery, and this is a powerful data transformation tool that allows you to clean, transform, and shape your data. So it's possible as well to schedule refresh these data flows. So your data will remain up to date, okay? Then we can create several reports. That's it. Let's go for the next question. Why is it important in the big picture? So data flows help organizations to create a centralized, scalable, and reliable data preparation process that enables business users to make better decisions based on trusted data. Data flows can also reduce the time and effort required to prepare and analyze data by automating repetitive and time-consuming tasks. So some key benefits of using Power BI data flows including centralized data preparation. Data flows allow you to create centralized location for preparing and transforming data. This helps to ensure that all reports and dashboards using the same data are consistent and up to date. Another key is the reusability. Data flows can be reused across multiple data sets, reports, dashboards, saving time and effort. Then we have the automation. Data flows can be scheduled to run automatically, so you can keep your data up to date without manual intervention. Then we have here as well the data governance, because data flows allows you to reinforce data governance policies such as data quality standards, data lineage, and data retention policies. And for last, collaboration, okay? Data flows can be shared with other users, allowing teams to collaborate on data preparation and transformation. So where is this taking place? So this is in Power BI service, okay? Data flows are cloud-based service that is integrated with the Power BI service, can be assessed and managed by this service online, and they can be used to build data sets in your Power BI desktop. So there are differences between the license for the pro users and the premium license, because the premium, it can be premium per user or the premium capacity subscription will let another features available, like for example, direct query, computer entities, linked entities, incremental refresh, and also advanced analytics such as machine learning and AI. So this is only for premium license. This is the big difference between the license between the premium and pro in Power BI service for data flows. Of course, there are other differences between these two types of license. So, who is affected and who can benefit from Power BI data flows? So, the Power BI data flows are designed for the business users, data analysts, and data scientists who need to prepare and analyze data from multiple sources. But data flows can be built by non-technical users, but also provide advanced functionalities for users with technical skills. So data flows can be managed by the data governance team to ensure that the data is consistent, current, and up to date as well. Okay? So, when this makes sense? There are some scenarios that this really makes sense. Because data flows can be used whenever an organization needs to prepare and analyze the data from multiple sources. Data flows can help to work with data on-premises databases, on cloud-based applications, and several other data sources. So this is for scenarios that can be very useful, because I don't know if you work with files stored in SharePoint, for example, but many times this process takes so very long time to run, and the data flow will increase your capability to load all this information for the service and reuse it for different data sets, for example. And the computer engine for the data flows is more fast to load all this information from SharePoint. Then, many times we know that we don't have access, for example, to build the new views, or we don't have at all a data warehouse where we can store all our data that we want to reuse. So, like Matthew Roche say, data transformations state that should be transformed far upstream as possible, and far downstream as necessary. And we believe that in this case, when we don't have access to the upstream possible, we have here a solution that can be a staging solution, when we can prepare our information and all the business user can, for example, reuse this instead of make all these transformation and each data set that you want to use this information. So another possibility of use this is when you want to centralize your tables and use it in different data sets, because you know that different persons can be accessing the information and transform their own data like they want, but this means that different persons can bring the data in different ways, and these can make the information not be the same in the same business, and this is important to keep equal. So this is a way to centralize this information for reuse as well. Then we have here as well another scenario when you have different data sources and you want to have in the same data set different times of schedule refresh. So imagine that you want some information from the SharePoint and another from your SQL database, but you want to have different times to refresh this information. Sorry. So you can have one data flow that daily refresh the information in SharePoint, and another that you refresh the information 8 times a day, for example, and your data set, when refresh this information, pull the information from the 2 data flows, and you have information that have different times of refresh in a single data set. So I think let's go to Dataflow, okay? You can go to Power BI service and see some scenarios, but I don't know if you have some questions that you want to do for now. So, I don't know if you are already explored data flows in Power BI service. I will show you here some of data flows that I prepared for you. So in here you can see the data flow as a different icon for the object itself, right? This is the one for data flow. You have here as well some options, a bit different from the Power BI dataset, but you also can edit, see the settings, or refresh, or see the refresh history of your data flow. But for now, we will edit this one. So you can see here the entities inside my Power BI data flow, sorry. And you can also see all the columns that we have, all the data types of each column, and we can also add more tables or edit tables, existing tables in here. So in this case, I want to show you that the Power Query from Power BI Dataflow is very similar of the Power BI dataset in Power BI Desktop, right? This Power Query is very similar. We have all the options from transform, add columns, and so on. But there are some difference in here because you can also have some views a bit different from Power BI Desktop. As you can see here, for example, you can have a diagram view from our flow of data. So you can see the parameters, we can see the staging steps that we are having here built, and then we have the final tables that we bring to this data flow. So you can actually see all the steps in here. You can expand these and see, and you can actually select these and make some change if you want. So you can also, in here, show the schema view from our table, the final table. So if you select a different one, you can see this as well showing here, okay? So in this case, to bring new data is similar to Power BI dataset in Power BI Desktop. You have here the several data sources, the connectors to all these data sources. You can select the one you want. In the case of you have on-prem data source, you have to use a gateway, like in Power BI dataset. But in this case, you will connect your data, your gateway in the settings of your data flow, but in here itself, meaning that if you want to create a connection to a data server that are on-prem, you have here the possibility to select the data gateway that you want to connect, to schedule this refresh, okay? So this is a bit different from the Power BI dataset because this is made in here inside the Power Query. So this is an example that I talked before. We have some files in our SharePoint. Many of these tables have several modeling steps that we want to do. For example, a split of columns, or we have here a more complex one because we have here a transpose table, for example. So these will be available for all the users that want to use these files. And instead of make all these steps in each data set that will use this file, this is stored in here, and the users can use this table prepared for use already. So after we're doing this data flow, we can use it in Power BI desktop for build a new data set. So if you have a data flow, you cannot already build a report, but you want to create a data set before you create your report. Because in here, we only have entities, okay? We don't have relationships at all, okay? So you want to create your data set to bring our information, to create your relationships, and you can also add more information from different data sources as well. So in Power BI Desktop, we have here a connector for Power BI Dataflows. So in here, I already signed in. So I have my workspaces, and I have here the data flows, the two data flows that I shared with you, the views and the files. In here, I can select, for example, the table I want or several tables I want to load. And I will, for example, bring the geo table. In this case, Power Query behind will bring our information, but we have only two steps I will show you in transform data, because I think this is important for the scalability of our data set, because we have here only two steps. One that lists our environment and workspaces, and then the navigation in here selects already the geo. But in Advanced Editor, we can see that we have 4 steps, okay? You have the source, that this is a connector that will connect to my account, okay? Then we select the workspaces instead of the environments, and then we'll select automatically the workspace ID and the data flow ID. So I will recommend you to create some parameters and replace these IDs for parameters. So in this way, if, for example, want to replace the workspace or the data flow because we have some environments, for example, for dev and for production, and we want to redirect our data set for a different data flow, you can simply change the parameters, and this is very more fast than open the advanced editor, edit it, and load again the information. So I will cancel this. I will create first my parameters. So in here, we can choose between create a parameter when I store my Dataflow ID or my Dataflow name. Okay, this is optional, but I will create with an ID. So I'll put here the workspace ID. I will put this on text. I will see the workspace ID. I can see as well in the steps of the advanced editor, but to show you where this came from, I will show you in Power BI Desktop and Power BI Service. So in here, in this URL, you can see after groups ID. This is the ID from the workspace. So I will copy this. And I will put in my current value. So this is my parameter for workspace ID. Now I will create a new parameter. And I put here Dataflow ID. And this case, I will close this, but in this case, if I select the data flow that I want, in this case, files, after data flows, this is the ID from my data flow. Okay, so I will copy this and put in my current value. So in this case, what I can do, I will go to Advanced Editor again and replace this value for my parameter. So in that way, like I said, if you want in the future move your data flow for a different workspace or even create a new data flow, because in the, if I can have a different data flow with another geo table, for example, I want to replace it because it's a more current table. I want to replace only the data flow ID. I can do it as well. So in this case, I will data flow. So these steps are done. And you can see all the information is up to date. I can refresh just to make sure this is correct. But in this case, I have a workspace ID and a data flow ID in parameter, and we can basically redirect in the future my data set. So I can show you as well, close and apply, how easy it is. So this is load, okay? And I have now my table geo, and I'll be able to create my own data set with this information. So, okay, now I have a need to reuse this data flow because I want to move it to another workspace, a production workspace, for example. And how can I do it? So, in this case, we don't be able to copy this. This is not a PBIX file. In this case, it's a JSON file. So I can export this JSON file, and I show you what is inside. So this is a JSON file. I can format this to show you better. And in here is stored all the metadata from our data flow. You can see my parameters, I can see my folders, I can see all the queries that I made, and so on. I can make some changes in here and load, for example, my data flow again. For example, If I want to replace, for example, some parameter, like the SharePoint that I'm using in my data flow, I can replace in here, and I can load after my JSON with this change, okay? In this scenario, I won't change this, but be aware that this is possible. So, for example, if I want to load this data flow, I will now just the files to make sure this is a different JSON, because in here, when I want to create my data flow, I have here different approaches. I can load a model that I have already in my computer. In this case, this is what I will use. But also, I can link tables from another data flow as well, or I can create a data flow from scratch. In this case, I will import a model that already exists. So I will go here to my downloads, and I will load my JSON file. So in this case, I have here, I don't load the right one, but it's the same, so don't worry. So in this case, if I load a file with the same name, you can see that there are no replace from the previous file. So this is a file that are created from scratch and rename it with this nomenclature. But you can edit in here the name in the properties. You can rename it, for example. And you can go edit and see that all the steps that you have in the previous data flow are in here, because this is exactly a copy of that. But for example, if you changed a parameter, this will change as well, but you can change here now. And I think this is the best approach, because if you replace in your JSON, maybe you can make something wrong, and will not work in here. So, more things that I want to show you. In here, this data flow don't have any information for now, because we don't have any refresh from the data. Because when you build a new data flow, these only entities, and you have to refresh these to have information inside this data flow. So if I go here, and now I can show you that if I replace this data flow ID, we have information here, right? And I will replace this data flow ID for the new one. In this case, we don't have any information, okay? This is the new data flow, and we don't have any refresh from the data, so for now, there are no information inside the data flow. So if I go here and refresh my data flow, this will take a few seconds. I can actually go here and refresh history. I can see this is still in progress. But when this is finished, all the data will be loaded, and we can see in the data set. I will show you later. I want to show you something, because the history of the data flows are a bit different from the Power BI data set, because I have here a refresh that failed, but instead of see here the error that happened in my loading, I have to load a file where I can see the errors from this data flow. So this is a failed one. I will download it and I will open to show you. This is an Excel file, CSV file that I can open in Excel. But in here, I will show you all the columns that shows. I have here all the tables that I have in my data flow. I have the start time and the end time, the duration as well. This information is always not applicable, but I believe in the future Microsoft will improve this and make some information in here. So the error is that. So in this case, I have here error in the data formatting of one of my tables, in this case in the geo table. So I can see in here the error, data flow error will not convert to a number. So this is a bit different because you have to download this file and show and see in here all the errors from your refresh. So let's see if this is already refreshed. Still in progress. We'll come back later. So I show you how you can download JSON, for example, and add and import your data flow. But I want to show you as well how you can create a data flow from scratch, because there are several ways to do it. I will choose this, define new tables. In this case, you can see all these data sources, but I will recommend you to start from blank query, and that way you can load this empty table, or you can delete it after, but this way you can actually have access to all these possibilities, from creating new parameters, for example, or create new connections from here. So I showed you before, this is the same way you can do it in Power BI dataset, for example. You can create your own parameters. And now, for now, you can create your connection to a SQL database using your parameters in here. For example. So this is an example of how you can bring your own data, but there are several ways more, because in any scenario, you can start building your data flow in Power Query in dataset, because you can see all this data query is using the same language of dataset. So we can actually go in our Power BI desktop, create all the steps that you want to create to bring your own data, and you can actually do something very easy, like select this group, copy, and go here, and we cannot paste, so you have to Control V, and we have here all the steps from my calendar, okay? This is more easy. I recommend to do it, because like this is in Power BI service, this is a cloud-based, and if you are not premium, this service can be slow, and I recommend to create your steps in Power BI desktop, and then you can load to Dataflow later, okay? So you can create all of these, copy and paste. So this is a good approach because you already have the Power BI desktop, you are used to it, and you know how to work with it. So after you can select, copy, paste, and you have all the data that you want in your data flow. So there are some, actually there are in here as well, in Power BI desktop, external tool. This is an extra tool that will allow you as well to export your data flow. But in this case, exporting this will export already the JSON, okay? That JSON that I showed you before with all entities, with all the connections, with all the steps. We actually can use this external tool. This is an open source that are in Git, and we can actually, okay, this is some error, but every session has to be an error, okay? So this is the error from this session. But you can use it and export your JSON file, and this will be available for you to load in Power BI service, like I showed you before with another JSON file. So you can go here, and then we can import your file and work on them. So this already refreshed the file example that I showed you before. We can see in here, refresh history is complete. It took 2 minutes to do it. And now, if I go in my Power BI desktop, I already filled this parameter with the new one. And now, this is empty, but if I refresh preview, it will load all the information that already has loaded in Dataflow. So in this way, you already have this up to date, and you can load, and this is redirected to our data set. So in this case, I will save this, just an example of a data set. I will publish this in my workspace, just to show you that in Power BI service, we can see the lineage of this data set starting in data source, going to data flow, and going to data set. So in this case, if I go here, I already have my data set, and in here in view, I will choose lineage, just to show you in here that we have here our data set, right? They are connected to a data report, because automatically the Power BI service assumes that your file, your dataset file is a report as well. So you can see the lineage starting in SharePoint, going to our data flow, and then we connect this to dataset. So in this case, we have here one dataset connected to our data flow. But like we discussed before, we can have a new dataset, or maybe I can do better. Instead of making this again, I will copy my dataset in my machine. I don't know where I stored my dataset, so I will open from Power BI Desktop, because they'll show me here the last datasets that I work on. So in this case, I will save this with a different name, just to show you. the lineage of two data sets connected to the same data flow. So in this case, I will publish this in my workspace. Okay, and now we have here two data sets connected to the same data flow as source, and that went from our SharePoint as well. So in this case, we can see these, all these files can be reused in different data sets, in different data flows. But there are another scenario that I showed you before, that I can have a data set connected to two data flows, different data flows. For example, I want this one refreshed daily, and the views, I want these refreshed twice a day, for example. So in this scenario, I will first put my schedule refresh for files daily. I want these, for example, 1 a.m. and I will put the views, in this case daily, but I want these 1 as well, but already want in 2 p.m., for example. And now, in my dataset example 2, I will connect to a different data flow. So in this case, I can manage this parameter, and I guess it's more efficient that I select this parameter and change the name for data flow ID from files. And I will add a new one, data flow ID views. I will see the ID from my, already having here, views and files. Put this as text. I have now two data flows IDs, and then I will go here, I will select data flow. I will bring my sales. So like we discussed before, you only have here 2 steps, but if I go advanced editor, I have here more than 2 steps, and I will replace in here this value for my parameter. The workspace ID is the same, but we can be 2, 3, more than 1, of course. And in here, I will choose the data flow ID views to replace the ID for the sales one. So, okay. Workspace, yes, missing an S. So then, okay, nice. Let me show you that in Geo, we rename the parameter, but this is automatic. So if you go Advanced Editor, the data flow ID replaced itself for data flow ID files. So in this case, I will close and apply. So I will load this and publish in our workspace. Yes, I want to replace. Got it. So in here, I will close, and I will see in my lineage that I have here the dataset example 2 that are connected to different data flows. But I think it's important to mention that we put this refreshing daily at 1 a.m. and the views at 1 a.m. and 2 p.m. So in this scenario, I have to calculate the time that our data flows are the duration of the data flows refresh, because it's important that when my data set refresh, all my data flows already refresh as well. So if I know that my files have a 2 minutes duration and my views has 30 seconds of duration, I have to put my dataset refreshing as well. I have to go here and put my credentials, of course. So now I can schedule this. So this is important that I don't start to refresh my data set at 1 a.m. because my data sources, that in this case is my data flows, are not already refreshed. So I will choose to refresh my data set at 1:30, and I will put twice a day because I have the views refreshing twice a day as well. So in this case, I only be able to choose 1 a.m. or 1:30, so I have to wait 30 minutes to refresh this. But in this case, I have assurance that all my data flows are refreshed already, and then I can have my data set refresh as well. So I have 2 steps from refreshing, okay? I have the data flows refreshing, and then the data sets refreshing. So be careful, don't have your data set refreshing before the data flows, because in this scenario, you don't be able to see your data up to date. So that's it. Now we have here our data sets schedule and all my data flows as well. So that's it. I don't have any more time to show any scenario, but feel free to contact me. DevScope has downstairs actually some what is calling, Bruno? We have a stand. Stand, okay. It's a difficult word. A stand, so you can go there and discuss with us some of these or other types of scenarios. So feel free to contact. This is the QR code for feedback. So thank you very much, and see you next time.